What's going on, ladies and ladies? It's Jason Zombie Collector. Thought I'd pop on for a little bit of time. Probably not super long tonight. Tomorrow is a work day, so don't want to be up too late. But I thought I'd hang out here with all you fine young cannibals. Do a little you know, Thursday night thunder and just see how things are going. I think I did a live stream a couple days ago for roughly about an hour, and I'm hoping to be able to have a good time this evening. Chat you guys up a bit. Maybe I even get chatted up, chickadee chat, and I have a good time. And so, anyways, just hanging out here. Thought you all maybe we could get some conversations going, maybe ask some questions. What's on everybody's mind? I know last time we talked about the Royals. When we say the Royals, we mean the royal family. Ron Mofo Fig, what up, Figgy? Well, I'm watching some. I watched some wrestling, dude. This evening. What up, Don? Don and Ron. There's a tag team for you. That's probably like circa 1978, probably. Don and Ron connection. Yeah, buddy. Cheers. So, so I've been watching some wrestling today. I got caught up on AEW Dynamite. That was fun. I thought they did a good job of how they spun the whole exploding death match that didn't actually explode. I thought they did a good job of like leaning into it and kind of making it complete fiasco and putting it all on Kenny Omega and Don Callis and Impact Wrestling. I thought it was genius. So I like it. That was some good storytelling to try to talk yourself out of a kind of a nightmare scenario. Right, no kidding. The Can-Am Connection 2.0, baby. Yeah. Ah, man. So I'm gonna have a guest. I'm here in a few minutes. Pop on, and we're just gonna. I haven't talked to this lovely individual, this nunchuck master, in a while actually. At least not 1-on-1, 1v1. We have not spoken in a while, so I thought I'd have him on, and we talk for a little bit. I know that um, he's a person I can connect with pretty easily. We just have a good back and forth and chat, and I enjoy that. I'm thinking I'm going to start trying to just keep my conversations to just a few people at a time, maybe even just like a 1v1 a lot. I do feel like when I have multiple, four, five, six people, it just becomes too much. And I don't want, I think I'm going to start being like more selective. And when I do that, I think for me, it's just me trying to keep control of what's going on and figuring everything out, and not having 16 conversations going at the same time. And I also want to be able to kind of focus on the chat. And when there's so much going on, it's hard to focus on the chat and also everybody in there. Even though I don't feel like it has to be about me, as far as like being kind of like the MC, I still feel have some responsibility to, kind of navigate or direct the conversation in some cases. So yeah, I know, I agree, Don. Yeah, John's cards suck completely, horrible cards. John, he definitely is one of those sellouts they used to less than Jake would sing about back in the '90s. Um, that yeah, for definitely John's cards are completely crap. So hey, what up, Schmidt? Schmitty, what up, brother? I'm glad you all popped in today. We're hanging out for a smidge, for a little smidge here, and chat everybody. Hope everybody had a nice week, a good week. It's essentially we're on what, Friday Eve. Friday Eve is always a good thing. I'm a big fan of Friday Eve, and so yeah, I'm excited about tomorrow. Yeah, that sucks that I don't have them. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, but the cool thing is, Don. The cool thing is, if you do a video and you just say every card you show off is rare, then you're almost there. You're almost at the level of John's collection. If you just say, "Hey, I got a real rare set to show you today. This is a real rare card. I didn't know this card existed till recently. It's pretty rare." I think you pretty much have encompassed a little bit of the spirit of the Mangini collection. So for sure. But yeah, I think his collection has been. Yeah, I think you just try that. Just kind of do that. Do your best with that. Try to take some ownership of that. Say that's your best. Just say this is my rare card or my rare cards, and then we'll go from there. Talking about the rare card master himself. There he is.
Hey, Zombie. Sorry for the delay.
That's all right, dude. Not everybody's working out drinking black or chocolate milk right afterwards,
Well, you know what? I grabbed a workout and then I got pinged for work. So I had a little work to do. And then that milk kind of went right through me, man. I don't know.
Oh, man. Alan had left the best quote of the day. I don't know if this is an actual quote from you, John, but I think I have heard you say this before. Have you said this? PSA is only graded 0 these cards ever.
I said that about at least one.
Right. That's such a John Mangini quote. I'm like, even if that's not you, that's definitely can be attributed to you.
Yeah, I had a card not so long ago. It was I forget. It's from the 20s. Those cards are so rare. There's so many rare sets from the 20s. It's such
right.
It was a tough era. They have mostly those black and white strip cards. Most of the cards from the 20s are cutouts. And there are some real rare sets. You got the Willard Chocolate, you got the Oxford Confectionery, then you got the W502, 501, those kinds of cards.
You're actually a good person to ask this question to, and I kind of just thought about it recently. I've always been a big fan of oddball cards. Obviously, that became crazy in the 80s and 90s of everybody, their grandma was in their basements making baseball cards. So it was became a thing. But do you know, in your mind, I know that when Topps started out or whatever, it was mostly for, trying to sell their gum or whatever. And
right.
Then, obviously prior to that, like you said, there was tobacco cards and candy, chocolate cards and in the 20s and 30s. Do you know when the first real card company that was just producing without any kind of gimmick kind of thing? Do you know what cards were like that, even maybe during that time back in the 20s and 30s and 40s? Or was it always exclusively related to selling some product?
Honestly, I think the first straight cards, and I could be wrong. I mean, you're asking me and I had no time to think. But I think the first straight cards might have been, where you didn't get them from a store or they didn't have a product, might have been the 89 Upper Deck.
Yeah,
where they made just to be baseball cards.
Right. That's probably true. You're probably right. Major cards, that's true.
Yeah, I remember when they came out, they were the first one that had the foil packs.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody was chasing that Ken Griffey Jr. rookie, and I didn't really care for it. I just thought it looked like a teenage guy with a chain. It wasn't a good looking card to me.
Yeah.
And you know how I always joke around about the Mariano Rivera looking like he's in high school in his street clothes.
Right.
So anyway, but because it was a hot card, I wanted to get it. So that was the first time where cards went from like a quarter to $1 a pack, and they were in the foil, and they were all these shiny cards. And man, I would buy pack after pack. All my friends got the Ken Griffey Jr. card, and I could not pull that to save my life. I had to buy it years later. And the funniest thing about it is that I guarantee you that the '89 Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card is the most overproduced card ever made. I mean, there are rumors that they kept making it the next year. So it's just ironic. I couldn't pull it myself. But at $1 a pack, I was running out of money.
Right, they probably heard you badmouthing it for the previous year, so they're like, "You're never gonna get it now. You're just gonna keep on. You're gonna keep dropping your dollar bills down, and you're never gonna grab one."
Yeah, I was chasing. I liked his tops rookie card better, and the Donruss too. All of his other rookie cards I actually liked better back then. Of course, at the time we didn't realize how overproduced all those cards were.
Right. Do you see that that kind of thing happening right now with the way the market is? Like, you keep hearing people say they're like keep producing more and more and more. I mean, I feel like I'll say this, and then you may not have an answer to this, or maybe people in the comments can, but I feel like there are people who are actively trying to say that's not actually the case because they want to make as much money and they want to make as much of a push to prospect and get as much money and out of these cards as possible to try to downplay how much is being produced. But like, if you start listening to people talk about production runs or like numbered cards that are so much harder to find because there's so much more product, so it's not as easy to hit, like out of the 2021 gold cards and tops and stuff, it starts to make you wonder, are we heading in that direction again? Are we going to be stuck there for another 2 or 3, 4 years before maybe we hop back out? Or, I mean, no one maybe really knows, but I feel like we're kind of heading that direction.
Yeah, I mean, first, we're definitely in an overproduced era, but the thing is it's different this time. Like back then, they just made 4 million of every card, and there was one set, and every card had 4 million. Now they're overproduced. However, you have rainbows, you have parallels, you have refractors. So they're overproduced in a much different way. And of course, the those short prints, all of them, I'm just lumping them in one big category. Those are obviously the place to be, right? Like, you want the Acuna back down versus his regular card, for instance. Now, as far as how many they're producing, that's a great question. I mean, those aren't published as far as I know. But I can tell you this. If you go on to eBay at any given time or you go into auction, I mean, you can go back years and still buy boxes of cards, right? Like, I look at like the Michael Jordan rookie card. You can still buy boxes of the '86 basketball cards, right? So it's like, how special is a high grade Michael Jordan when you could still pull them out of the packs? I mean, breakers are doing that all the time. Auction houses are constantly selling those boxes. But if you went on and you looked, you could probably find unopened boxes of just about anything.
You're right.
From the modern era.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is that, it does seem that people are finding, at least for 2021 right now, a lot of that product still. It's starting to still seem like it's starting to become a little bit more easy to find. I'm seeing I don't hear as many people complain about not being able to find so far, that these are not so difficult to find. But I think it's something that I don't know if you said on your channel, but I've got the impression some from the watching your videos, and I know that Yanks Fan 7 discussed it. I've discussed it, and I know like Mike Baseball Collector, he's discussed it. Like, just kind of taking a break from like just buying cards, like especially some of the more desirable cards or whatnot, because it has been gotten crazy. Looking at other ways to spend your money on other parts of the hobby, or maybe taking that money, maybe doing something else with it for the time being, because it's very frustrating for the very reason we're talking about. Because if you try to zig, we'll zag. If somebody tries to zig, you zag. But even I feel like sometimes when people are zagging, we got tens of thousands of people zagging at the same time. It's still kind of hard to find some of those cards. I know you said multiple times on your channel that you're still going for things that most people just aren't on their radar. But I'm assuming there's a point that I'm sure there's points in time that you've been looking over the last few months or a year that you still kind of go, just have to shake your head and be like, seriously, this card's going for this right now? Like, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I've felt frustrated where I've been buying a lot less. I mean, if it's a card you see in a magazine, if it's a card everybody knows, it's probably I don't want to use the term overpriced because next year they might be up.
Right.
But
Sure.
but it's high priced right now. I'll say that. So if it's a
Sure.
card
That's fair.
everybody knows, and then so I've been going. I've been buying a lot less. I'll be honest. And what I have been buying, I've been playing in the cheap card realm again. Buying cards from the earlier 2000s or 90s or 80s. Like 1979-ish, that was kind of my wheelhouse when I was young. So I'll go back and pick up like the O-Peaches now because I have the complete set of tops, and you can pick them up for a couple bucks just to kind of have that enjoyment of getting cards and still collecting. But I've definitely toned it down. I've also been buying, more unique things like tops contracts and stuff like that. I have a long-term dream, I guess, of, having some sort of museum. And so I love to get my hands on old, like I have old Kellogg's boxes where the cards came in and these tops contracts, stuff like that. And I just picked this up. It's a 1935 batter up, and it's a high number short print, but it's Ernie Lombardi. And of course, he's a Hall of Famer. This is not, these cards are not that prevalent, and you can get these for next to nothing because, the people that are buying up all the cards, they're doing it to invest. They don't necessarily know the history of baseball. They don't necessarily know the secondary Hall of Fame players. And by secondary, I don't mean they were any less good. I mean that not everybody knows about them. Like I guarantee you, they don't know who Chick Hafey is, for instance.
Right.
Guys like that, because they're just chasing the buck and they're investing, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking it. But as a true baseball fan, a fan of the game, a fan of the history, and a fan of old cards, there are still be had in stuff like this.
And I think that's the big thing here. Well, I don't know if you see this question here by Cards Collection. John, I haven't seen a Bruce Lee card in your collection yet, unless I missed it. Have you? Do you have a Bruce Lee card? I thought I'd seen you show it.
I have a set from the 70s. Yeah, I have a whole set of his from the 70s. I think it's from 74. And I have this awesome thing.
Oh, I hope everybody's sitting down because it's going to be something that's going to be super awesome. Oh, nice.
That's from the 70s.
Yeah. Now that's the Game of Death. Is that the Game of Death uniform?
Yeah, and they were filming that when he passed, and they had filmed the fight scene first. Thank God, or we would have never gotten to see it. And so they used it. I'm sure a lot of people out here saw the movie, but if you didn't, they used a double that didn't really look anything like him. He had sunglasses on most of the time to cover his face, but. These are pretty cool. This is from I believe this is from 74 as well. I was a huge Bruce Lee fan.
Oh yeah. So Yanks fan Simmons asking, do you do anything with comic books? Do you collect anything comic book related, or
No.
I don't think. I don't think I ever seen anything.
I'm not a comic book collector, but I always found it funny that they would grade them. Because, isn't the idea of a comic book to look at it and read it? Once it's encapsulated, I always felt the same way about unopened packs because I like to open them. But it's like, you'll never know what's in there. You'll never know once it's encapsulated. So I never kind of got that. I understand
the same thing too. But... Right. I understand that you can buy like the aftermarket, like the trade paperbacks and read the stories and know what's actually in there. I get that concept, but there's I kind of like you, I agree. Like, you kind of comic books are kind of like old baseball cards. They have like a smell to them. They have a feel to them, And when you open up an old comic book, you have a very distinct smell and like there's an experience you have with it, And And when they're
Right.
encapsulated like that, that's all gone. There's like the experience is gone. It's just this very generic, very like what's the word I'm looking for? Like hospital, like sanitized thing, and there you can't touch it anymore. And I understand the same thing with a baseball card, but it's front and back of a car. That's it. You can still see
Right.
it
Right.
completely. But yeah,
Same with
I get what
same
you're
with the
saying.
coin. Now I have a collection of old baseball cards magazines, and I'll look through them sometimes. I keep them real nice. I'm very into keeping them in nice condition. But I had one that I really liked, and I actually got two of it, so that one I didn't have to touch. It was an early issue, I think the second issue, and one that I can look through because it's so fabulous. Like it's such a great addition to the magazine.
Oh yeah, and I did want to ask you to kind of go back a little bit on the cards. I did want to ask. So when you are looking for like the Lombardi card, or you're looking for other cards out there, do you have in your mind that you kind of, I don't know if you play a game on yourself that says, I do want to find some of these cool cards, maybe these rare cards, these kind of off the radar cards, but then in your mind what those cards will usually go for, or like maybe what your top price is. So do you just stay out of it if it starts getting ridiculous, or do you
Yes.
think because they're hard and hard to find, you kind of still will play the game and try to bid them up?
No, you know what? I always try to find a deal. I'll make offers. If they don't take them, I'll place bids, and if I get outbid, that's it.
Right.
You can get wrapped up, and we've all been, and some of us are still there, myself
Yeah.
included, where you start to get that competitiveness, and you don't want to
Yeah.
get outbid, and you're like, oh, he bid that. Oh, let me get him back. Let me bid this. Let me bid. You know what I mean? So what happens is when it gets a little too crazy, I'll go on and I'll start to look and see what other ones are selling for, or if there are other ones available. For instance, that is something I have done at least 100 times with PWCC auctions. There are so many people. I think that they bid up their own auctions because their stuff always sells for way more. So I will be bidding on something I really like there, and it's a week in advance or whatever, and come closer at the end of the auction, it'll all of a sudden run way up. And then I'll go on and I'll find, three other options for a lot less. I'm like, why are people bidding this up when you can just go over here and buy this one for less? And it's
Right.
often, a half grade or a grade higher. So I'll do that. I'm definitely a bargain shopper, believe it or not. I am. There are very few cards I would pay up for. They'd have to be really rare, or I had to be looking for them forever, and I finally found one and I just want it. That kind of thing.
Right. So do you see? I heard. I think I can't remember who did a video. I think maybe actually again Yanks fan did a video about this. You may not have seen it or not, but apparently, and I don't know if this is just like a lull that we might have experienced over the last month or so. But he made it sound like quite a few vintage cards are coming down. Like there's a I think he did a video of like 15 or 20 cards that just 2 months ago were like going up, and then in the last month they've like come back down to reality, let's say, because the cars are expensive, but not like they were a month ago, but also not like a year ago at the lower prices. So I know you've said this before on your channel. I know like myself and other people, like there's no way they can sustain at those prices. There's eventually going to have to be a course correction or whatnot. But my question to you is the course correction going to be back to the prices that were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or is it going to go back to maybe instead of being 2,500, it goes to 1,300, but it won't go back down to 800. Where do you think, with just your years of experience, think where these cards will end up going back down to, or will they never really be those good deals anymore out there?
Well, so a few things. Number one, I have noticed that prices have come down a bit. But let's look at this. Let's put collecting aside. Let's put investing. Let's talk about investing. It's
Sure.
investing that is driving this, right? If you look at any stock chart in the history of the stock market, going back to the 1700s, there's not a single stock chart that goes like this, not one. They go like this. And things that go up way high have exactly what you just said, the term you used, a correction. Now, if we're going to use the term correction, a correction just usually means a pullback and a pause before going higher. That's how it is in stocks. You know, there's a difference between a correction and a crash or a bear market. A bear market's, you know, a market that goes down at least 10% and many times continues down. But with the card market, you know, I don't know. Things have gotten they went up so fast, so high, so fast that I think they didn't have much of a choice but to correct a little bit. So the big question is, will they go back up or will they continue down, or are they leveling off here? And I mean, I don't know. I really don't know, because I don't think there's anybody that could have predicted the entire hobby booming as high as it did. Maybe certain cards you could predict that, but not the entire hobby that's just pulled everything up with it. I don't think so. If you guessed that, it's luck. I think it's luck. I don't think anybody could have known that.
Right. I feel like there's just too many things, like a perfect storm all happened at the same time. I mean, there was a bunch of documentaries that hit. You know, we had a bunch of people sitting around in a pandemic that couldn't go anywhere and had a lot of extra money that they were using for vacations or trips or whatever. Then the government keeps giving you free money, you know, and then, you know, you have all these people coming out saying all these, like, you know, all these, like, what do you call them? Investors, or, like, you know, whatever you want to call them. Like, I don't know what the word I want to use, like getting people hyped about it. And it all just was like this perfect storm. Influencers, if those are what I'm trying to look for. They were like hyping up these cards. And I think that you do see that a lot, but I mean, I just can't. I want to say there has to be a bottom, you know. And I know people were talking about maybe 2 or 3, 4 years down the road, maybe it's going to happen sooner than that. At least maybe with vintage.
It could. You know, when I was on with you back in December, I told you that I think this is a bunch of, you know, a handful of rich guys selling to each other. And I think, like, I think when Vegas Dave started going on everywhere, saying what he was paying for this Mike Trout and that he was guaranteeing he was going to sell it for this, I think it's probably somebody he knew he bought it from, probably somebody he knew that bought it. And then that's really where this all began. And then these make the headlines, these insane card prices. Right after that, there was a LeBron that sold. And I mean, that's not even a good-looking LeBron. I'm like, you got to be kidding me with the sale of this. And then, of course, Mickey Mantle broke a new record. Then the Honus Wagner started to sell for more. And you know, I truly believe that it was a bunch of speculators that created this. So that lends the question, can it sustain? Is it real? Because when people are, you know, we talked about this before, when you have to pay $1,000 or more for a box of Prism basketball cards, and no card you pull out of there is worth anywhere near $1,000, how many boxes of those are you going to buy before you quit buying them and quit paying that for them? Because, you know, it's not easy to get those rare pools that are going to be worth a fortune. Most of the time you get a box of Panini basketball, you get nothing. And you just showed out $1,000. So how many times are you going to buy that box, the average Joe, and keep buying it? We've all been there where we're chasing cards and you get these boxes and you don't pull anything for 2, 3 boxes. Well, when they're $1,000 a box, you're giving up. You know, maybe if they're $20 a box, you keep going. Right. So I'm of the opinion that the market has been manipulated, and that you know, they do this in stocks too. There will be guys that buy penny stocks, like big investors, and then they'll put out newsletters or they'll send emails to investors. They'll get a hold of mailing lists and they'll tout it, and it'll be a 20-cent stock, and it goes up to $3 because everybody's, you know, buying into what they're saying. And then they dump their shares, and it goes right back to 2 cents or 1 cent. And most of those companies go out of business. So we will see. We'll see if it's real or not. I mean, I think it's a great thing for the hobby in many respects. I think it's terrible for us collectors. But if you are maybe retiring and you're thinking about selling your collection, it's awesome. You've been keeping these cards for all these decades, and they're finally, you know, worth what we all feel like they're worth. Nostalgically, right, but you know, it's bad because you can't buy as much, And some of my dream cards are totally out of reach now. Like I'll never have them. I have to come to the conclusion, unless they come way back down, I'm never going to have them. And
Sure.
that stinks.
Well, the cool thing is that you can open up your card museum, or sports card museum, and then you can have them on loan, and then you do have
right.
them.
I can get them from people who have them on loan. Exactly.
Right. So then you can like have them, as the focus of your collection,
Yep.
right there. So
I'm gonna have a section, and it would have to be insured for $20 million. But like Blue Jacket '66 collection, we'll have a section for that.
You should. Definitely. Between both of you guys, I think you probably got most of the stuff covered, quite frankly. So I mean, it'll be pretty impressive collection for sure. So I was going to ask you, with everything going on, and we've talked about that, I mean, do you find yourself, watching lots of videos or watching lots of eBay stuff, or are you just kind of taking a break from it all right now? I know you kind of said, as far as buying, you've kind of slowed down or been more meticulous about how you're spending your money, but are you kind of just feeling like a little bit of, just taking a break from all of it right now, just because it seems like a lot of just, craziness and overwhelming just perspectives and thoughts and ideas, or you're still involved in all that?
I've actually been watching more videos.
Mm.
I think I've been shopping less, and I've been watching more YouTube card videos actually, which is nice because I don't always have the time to do that. I'm really busy at work. I'm making my own videos. I'm working on my collection. So that's been nice. I get a bunch of magazines. I get Beckett Vintage. I get Beckett Sports Collect, the sports one that has everything. What's that called?
All of them. Too.
I don't know. It's escaping me. And I get Sports Collectors Digest. And to be honest with you, I've been reading them less because I get them to read up on old sets, and they have great articles. They feature great sets, and they're fantastic. But it gets kind of frustrating to open them up. And, all the ads are the same cards over and over again. And the auctions are just like outlandish. And it's starting to get too much. Like, I don't want to look at it all the time. I just want to it's kind of like politics. I got to a point where I don't even want to turn on the news anymore. It got overwhelming with what's going on, So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, and I agree because I also have a Sports Collectors Digest subscription, and I've noticed when I first got it a year ago or however long, I felt like there was a lot more articles in there just about, sports cards and collectors and sets and these rare this and this rare that or whatever. And then I feel like over the last few months, especially the last 6-7 months, like 2/3 of it is all about auctions, what everything's sold for, the hottest new auctions, like all the new cards.
That's what they talk about.
What the stock market's doing this with the cards and what's going to happen. I'm like, if you already have half your magazine is already ads, and now the other third of the magazine is about auctions and prospecting and what everything's sold for, that leaves a very small sliver for actual articles that have nothing to do with those two things. So I kind of like with you, it just kind of takes away from, like, I'm getting ready to read an article in the new SCD about a Japanese guy, a guy who played in Japan with Ichiro. I'm getting ready to read that article. I just saw it today when I was thumbing through it. I'm like, oh, that's great. But then I'm like, that's 2 pages out of a 100-page magazine or whatever that I haven't really saw anything else that caught my eye so far. So, but I kind of agree with you when it comes to that. So out of the channel, go ahead.
I just wanted to say one of the nice things about the boom is, the respect. And what I mean by that is when we had our first boom, back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I had a big collection from the time I was a little kid. And when I was still living at my parents, shortly before I moved out, they had a half-finished basement and one whole area that was finished off, and they didn't use it. So I set up all my cards down there. And when family would come over or people come over, everybody would want to go downstairs and check out my cards. It was like a big deal. And then, after the bust and everything with the junk era, it got to the be the point where like I would have friends say, "Oh, a grown man collecting baseball cards." It was almost like a put down. And now with these prices, all of a sudden we're back. We're cool for collecting again, and that's one
Right.
good thing that comes out of it.
Yeah. So now your wife doesn't feel so embarrassed when you bring up cards at a dinner meeting or whatever. You're like, oh, you have a Babe Ruth card or you have a Mickey Mouse. Like, let's hear more about it.
Yeah. Like yeah, my brother-in-law, he would always be like, I'd bring him up to my card room. He's like, I don't get it. Like, so when these cards started selling for a lot of money, I'm like, you get it now?
Yeah, he's probably like, oh, I do get it. All of a sudden he found a box that he needs you to look through. Yeah, so for sure.
But I mean, it's not about that, but it's a way it almost legitimizes it for us card geeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I kind of felt like that was the same thing when Marvel movies became so popular that, people who read comic books didn't feel like such a nerd anymore. Like, this is like something you do in your room. You got to hide your long box full of comic books because you can't get a girlfriend, or your parents are like, this is my nerdy son who has a comic book collection. It's like, no, I have these comic books that are worth thousands of dollars now because they made Iron Man a major character in a movie, or whatever. And it's like, now it's like the cool thing. And like you said, 30 years ago, that would have been like unheard of. You'd be like, you have an Iron Man comic and you're 28 or whatever. Like, what?
Yeah.
Are you still a virgin?
Well, I mean, you look at the old video games, it was, kids played them. You wouldn't see a 40-year-old man playing video games, but that's what you see today.
No.
And,
God,
the card gaming. Yeah, but you grow up with it, and it's something that you can do your entire life. So why can't you collect baseball cards your entire life? It's the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Like, and I think, and also now I think it kind of shows, like, to your point, is that regardless if it becomes out of vogue again, there's been enough, especially this time around, I think there's going to be enough long-term memory. People are going to know, like, there is money to be made, and it may not be at the same level of, like, craziness, but I don't think it will be such a, looked down upon thing. It'll be like, oh, this guy collects cards, okay, And I feel like you said years ago when I would be talking about being a ball card collector with other like parents around my kid, they're just kind of like, okay. But as soon as this year hit, they were like, oh, are you going to card shows a lot, Jason? Oh, I got a collection, or let me tell you what I have, or do you have this card? And then, like you said, it kind of all of a sudden turned into a cool thing. Where before it was kind of like, okay, what are you doing? You're collecting cards in your 40s, So
yeah, I'll tell you one thing that I think will be different this time is 20 years from now, you won't see guys with cases upon cases of Topps Big League and opening day in their garage trying to sell them for $100,000. Back in the 90s, everybody and their brother was buying cases, hoarding them. Well, maybe my kids are going to be rich one day. And, back then they had no idea that they made $4 million of every card. We didn't know. Right. They weren't trying about that.
Yeah, it was very, very true. So what I wanted to ask now, thinking about the future or whatnot, where do you see yourself for 2021 kind of going with your collection? Still, I know we're 3 months into the year, going to 4 months. Do you feel like you're just going to keep doing what you're doing? Or are you open to seeing if like certain opportunities open themselves up that you're going to look to go in other directions? Or you just kind of thinking, right now I like where I'm at. I like what I'm doing. Or are you like, I guess what's your thought process for somebody like of your level of a collector? What are you doing?
Well, to be honest, I've been leaning towards taking a break. But I mean,
you heard it here first, everybody.
But I can wake up one day and be in the mood, and then that changes. So I wouldn't commit to that. But I've kind of feel a little burned out in it. Like it's a little overwhelming if you get wrapped up in everything. So what I think you have to do, and what I what I keep telling myself to do, is just step back, maybe tune some of all the noise out. And get back to what you want to do, like things that you can do if you want to take a break and save up some money or just stop buying. You can like maybe put checklist a set you haven't collated yet. See how many cards you need for the set. Maybe you only, you some 1978, 79, complete that set, very cheap, organized, that kind of thing, where you could still enjoy your cards, do some things you've been putting off, make yourself feel better, where you're not spending, an arm and a leg on cards every week.
So I did want to, with that being said, because of trying to do something different and not get caught up in the whole hoopla of it all. You released a video about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, where you talked about PSA and the prices going up, and you're walking around your house with your coffee and looking out your window, and all the stuff you could do with the money that you're saving if you do this, or this is ridiculous enough at all. And if you did this, you could be doing this, or if you're feeling like this, then why don't you feel like this? Like, what was the response that you got from that overall? Because I know you shared that with me privately, but then you went public with the video and like the comments and stuff and the thumbs down and up. So now that you had a couple of weeks separated from that, where do you kind of where's your headspace with that at now? Do you feel like is as true as it today as it was 2 weeks ago when people were melting down, or what?
Well, it is. It was mistaken from the way I intended it. Number one, because I intended it in a few ways. I kind of have a dry sense of humor, and so this thing it had a few different angles to it. Really, number one, those are questions that go through my mind, and I just feel like every collector has those questions go through their mind. They start to question what they're doing. And number two, I find, and I guess I found this on Facebook groups more than anything, is there are some real snobby PSA collectors that try to make other people put them down for buying SGC or Beckett or Raw. And it was kind of my way. Not everybody can afford to get PSA graded cards or send a PSA. And some people like to buy raw cards. And it was kind of my way of telling those folks, it's okay. I collect raw cards. It's okay if that's what you want to collect. You don't have to have every card in a PSA. You don't have to spend $12,000 a year to grade all your cards. Like, you don't have to pull a card out of a fresh pack and send it right into PSA and wait 5 months and be excited when it's a 10. It should be a 10. It's a brand new card right out of the pack. It should be a 10. You know what I mean? And so you shouldn't feel stupid or belittled if you can't afford to do that, or that's not your cup of tea. I have PSA cards. I love the look of PSA cards. I have nothing against them. But I do feel that a lot of us, and I get wrapped up in this too, like where you want to replace cards and get a higher grade, right? You see that 9 and you have an 8, and okay, I'm going to pick up that 9, and you justify it by saying I'll sell the 8. In another month, I could probably sell the 8 more than I paid for the 9, that kind of thing. And you can get wrapped up, and I did, where you're buying cards you already have. Like I go back from cards from the 70s, from my childhood, and I'm rebuying them because of the holder, and you can get wrapped up in that. And I think a lot of us are brainwashed where it's junk if it's not in encapsulated. And then I would get a lot of comments too when I would post unique oddball stuff on Facebook groups. So I'd post something. I'm just using this as a generic example, but I'm put a picture like this, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'd love to have that if PSA graded it." Like, they don't want anything if they can't put it in a PSA. And more power to you. This is your hobby. This is my hobby. I can collect the way I want. You should collect the way you want. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm just saying that these are the thoughts that go through my own mind. And if me as a collector, I'm thinking about this, I'm sure other collectors are thinking about it too.
Sure. And I think also you have to think of it, as everybody, when I say you, I mean the capital Y, you, everybody has to think of it like, just because you feel that way, or 20 people feel that way, or 20,000 people feel that way, you're entitled to your opinion and your thoughts too. Like, no one's saying that this is the only way to think or this is the right way to think, but you have to also understand that a lot of people just don't buy into the hype or realize it's a pyramid scheme. Like a lot of the PSA cards that no one even cares about is to get on a registry. Is to have this registry to keep track of your cards and to be the top dog or the one who creates it and the one to like it doesn't count unless you get a PSA grade on it or whatever. Then like you said, the top grades. And how many of those in that set do you have? And who else is competing against you? And like you said, it's like instead of just being happy with the card, either raw, PSA, SEC, some off-brand, whatever, like it's still the card. It's still your card. You have it, and to be okay with that. And like you were saying, and I thought this was so true, like how many people get a card in some other like generic or like an SGC, and the first thing they say is I got to break it out of it instead of the PSA, or they got a PSA slab from like 1999 and they got to get in the new flip, or else it doesn't, or else it's not uniform. And all, it's like it's a sickness, it's an addiction. Like, is that card any less important if it's your card than it was 20 years ago?
Yeah, that's kind of my point. Is you can get wrapped up in the holders more than the cards. You know what I mean? And that's kind of one of my points. But the thing is since social media came out, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you put something out there, you put your opinion. Someone disagrees with you. There comes that dislike button. They can make very rude comments to you, and they're entitled to that opinion. But I'm not entitled to the opinion that I voiced, right? They think that they're the only ones that are entitled to their opinion. Well, I have an opinion too. I'm equally as in. You don't have to like it. You can give me a dislike. That's your prerogative. If you want to live your life in a negative way, go dislike all kind of videos. You know, I've never disliked a video in my life because I like to live my life positively. I like to help people, you know, and I never intentionally hurt anyone in my life, and I would never do a dislike. It's just like, what positivity comes from that? You know, I don't get it.
Right, and I've always, you know, and obviously in the last, you know, going on quite a while now, 8-9 months, I've been trying to be more a positive and not be so confrontational in my approach with people and all that.
I've noticed this.
I know, but the thing is that I think, to your point, is that people on social media, like you said, like if you and I disagree, even if I disagree with you strongly, if we're together, we're not going to act like some people act online. Like most people act online, like they start losing their minds and start being like making personal attacks or taking everything too personal. Like it's like some like great offense if you don't agree with everything that you say to each other. Like if you tell me I'm stupid for buying a Ichiro 30-year card for $95, you know, to my face, you're like, I wouldn't have done that. I'm not going to be like, you know, go F you, John. You know, it's just like, oh, well, that's what I do, you know? But I think people now, they get so hung up that you say an opinion that I don't like, that I'm going to go and like, you know, make a big deal about it. It's like, if you don't agree with it, you can just be like, you know, I agree to disagree, or, you know, that's fine. That's your opinion. But everybody has to be right. You don't have to be, you can't just disagree. Like, I've run into that a lot being on YouTube and also on Facebook, is that you don't have to agree with my opinion, but you also don't want to, you don't also got to tell me how I'm wrong and you're right and everything about it when it's an opinion. It's not fact. So I agree with you myself. So
hey, let's see what some of the comments are. Does anybody have any questions?
Let's see here.
Man, I always had 20/20 vision my whole life. So, you know, when I hit about 42, it started to go. And I still can't get used to having to wear glasses to read. I just can't.
Well, if you made it that long into your 40s, then good. So, hey, do you all have any specific questions? We got like 7. We're having between 15 to 18 people in here at any given time. So, you all have any questions that we can kind of like maybe talk about, or you can ask John, because definitely John's going to be way more knowledgeable than myself on probably most things. So, we got any questions?
I agree with you.
What was that?
He says if you're going to put out an opinion piece, you're going to get opinions. Of course, that's what
right.
You know. That's fine. It's just when they become rude or something, that's not cool to me. I don't believe rude.
Well, and I think for me at the end of the day is that you can disagree with me, but you know, to make it like you said, to get super butthurt about it of an opinion. I just don't get it. I'm just like, what? So he says, yeah, John, when the hell are you gonna you play in my metal request?
You know, I owe you that. I owe you that. Judas
That's the
Priest. I
motto.
remember. I remember.
Okay. All right, says John, where do you buy your raw cards that you feel comfortable with and know that they're legit?
So I say this all the time. Those of us who have been collecting forever, I mean, we can tell cards are reprints or something. Like it's not, you could tell. I could probably be a card grader, and you could tell if they're trimmed. It's not that difficult. And if they're trimmed, they're a different size, or you could tell on the edges. But what I like to do is to buy from reputable dealers, like dealers that have been in business for 30 years, who are reputable, who I've been buying from since the early 90s. I get cards from them a lot because they are
Yeah.
card dealers. They know these cards. They know where they came from. They know what they're dealing with. And when
Right.
I have sent them in for grading, I've gotten great grades on them. And I haven't had any come back fake or altered. I had one card I bought on eBay, a 1971 Pete Rose, and I paid not a lot for it on an auction, and I sent that back as colored. I mean, it just looked perfect, this card, and it didn't even surprise me that, because those 71s, if you do them right, it's hard to tell. That's a 1 year. It's easy to color them in, and they look legit. So I do prefer to buy my 71s graded for that reason. But most cards you could tell. I mean, I get them and I know right away if there's something off. But I like to buy from reputable dealers.
Do you think that you do you see yourself if this sustaining card increase continues to go? Do you see yourself buying a lot more raw and then eventually switch them over to get them graded when things kind of cool down? Just because the prices might be more reasonable for raw cards, and you could get them graded maybe a year from now with prices if they do drop back down to normalcy. That you're not spending so much money now that you go back and you go, even though this card goes up, I still overpaid, or it went down, and now I way overpaid. So do you see yourself trying to buy raw?
Yeah, the thing is you can pick up raw for a lot less. And I mean, I've had such good luck with it. Like I have picked up, cards for a few dollars, like $8 or something. Like one was a John Riggins rookie card in '72, and when I sent it in, it got a 9. I had a hockey card, Bobby Orr, and it came back a 9. I paid next to nothing for it because people just nowadays just ignore raw. And just because it's raw doesn't mean it's a fake, doesn't mean it's altered, just because it's raw. Like not everybody wants to, send in the money and pay the money to get their cards graded, especially if they're selling them. These people that I bought these, they're selling them for $9, $12 or something. So why would you pay more than you're going to sell the card for to get it graded? You're going to take a loss. So that doesn't even make
Right.
sense. And I think that the more cards are worth a lot of money, the more they are susceptible to people, altering them or trying to deceive people. There's no question about that. So you have to be careful. Would I buy a Hank Aaron rookie card for $4,000 raw? No, I wouldn't. You know, my
Yeah.
favorite.
Yeah. What's your
Uh,
favorite football set?
well, I love the.
Uh oh. Do we lose? Do we lose you, John? Uh oh. Do we lose John? Can you all hear him? I can't hear him. I think he froze. Oh no. Oh no. Right when he's about ready to drop some knowledge on us, I think we might have dropped. He dropped out. I think his connection was cutting in and out. Exactly. Dramatic pause. You got that right, Otto. So Yeah, it was a tough question. It was so tough that he ended up having to cut out and reassess his life. Oh, he's gone. So hopefully he'll pop back on and we'll get that question answered. So I appreciate all the comments, guys. I appreciate the positive, just like positive comments about myself and John, of course. I think he's in deep thought, right? That's the one thing I've been trying to enjoy doing on my channel is just like having different people with different thoughts and perspectives on things pop in and talk about cards, talk about our passions, our hobby, the good and the bad, and just try to like look at it from different perspectives because so many people's videos right now are about the card market, the stock market of cards, the prospecting, the flipping, and there's a place for that. But I mean, that's just not me. I want to talk to guys who just are collectors or predominantly collectors. And I'm glad that it's I don't care if there's one guy in here or 100 guys in here. I just have fun doing it. And I appreciate you all hanging out and having a good time with us. That question was so powerful. You got left in deep thought. I see.
Sorry, I get my internet kicked off or something.
Right.
I don't know where you. My
about the football set.
Two of my absolute favorites are 75 and 76. Because I was really young at the time. That's when the Steelers had those great teams, and I just love the look of them. They're nostalgic to me. But the 66 Philadelphia set, I absolutely love that. The 59, 58 tops, 47, 48 leaf. Yeah.
One of the questions were, do you think there's going to be any really big card shows this year based on, the whole COVID stuff and precautions? Do you think we're going to get to the point maybe the next couple of months where you'll see card shows popping up pretty much everywhere all over again?
Yeah, I mean, you see, what are there, like 8 or 9 states that have totally opened up? So we'll see. I really doubt that the National is going to be totally open. Being in Chicago, I really doubt that. I hear you talk a lot about it, that you don't want to go if there are restrictions or you have to wait outside and they only let so many people in. So we'll see. It'll probably be crazy because of the current environment. You would think that so many people would want to go this year.
And I think that's what I think. I mean, and like, trust me, I want to be wrong. I want us to be like, Chicago is just like Mississippi. Like, we're open for business. We're moving on. If you're that scared or that worried, then don't go. But I also don't want to go if they're gonna, like you said, they have some sort of restrictions. So in Chicago's like California of the Midwest. So we'll find out. But
Chris Graps, I was actually thinking the same thing today because I know somebody that's going down to Florida. I was talking to an old worker of mine from when I lived in Florida, and he's talking about how everything's just normal down there. And I'm like, they should move the National to Florida. That's what they should do, someplace like that. I mean, not everybody's going to have that opinion. Some people, they want the distancing, and that's fine. But it's all of our choices whether we go or not. Whether we, it's a personal choice we all have to make. I personally, I've never been to a National, and last year was going to be my first. And, of course, it got canceled. I was super disappointed. I was going to take my dad because he likes to gamble. I was going to let him go to the casinos all day. I was going to go to the show and then meet up at night and stuff. And so this year was going to be another big thing. But the whole Corona thing, I haven't traveled since. Like, I don't want to travel. I don't want to wear a mask for 5 hours on a plane. It's just not like something that's, I don't know. It's just not enjoyable to me. So I really haven't. I want to drive wherever I go. So we'll see as we get closer.
So what about 50 or 51 Bowman? What's your favorite set out of those two?
Oh, they're both so great. I don't think I could pick one. Yeah, they're all the old Bowman sets. Like, I don't think, even in baseball, I don't think I have a favorite. They're all so great in their own way. Fast breaks and breakfast.
What's up, Paul? Fast breaks and breakfast. So yeah, I think that's what it boils down to, Don. I mean, if you go to anybody's channel that's been to the National, I think everybody's in agreement that like 90% of the reason you go is to hang out with other, YouTubers that are from the YouTube community. 10% going to the show, the actual card looking and buying and whatnot. But most of it's about the hanging out, palling around with everybody, going to the restaurants, grabbing a beer, having those conversations or whatever. So, yeah, for me, that's what it's all about. If I'm going to go, that's what I'm doing. I mean, because I think we all can probably agree this year more than any year, John, I think the prices are going to be through the roof at the National. So if you're going to the National for a good deal, it ain't going to happen probably. So, yeah. So you're probably going to not go there thinking you're looking for a good deal. So.
Yeah, that's another. I mean, to be honest, I say it all the time. Every time I'm on one of these or be interviewed, is I'm scared to death to go to the National. That's why I've never gone. I mean, I don't know how I could possibly control myself. I would probably run out of money the first hour.
Right.
It's got to be overwhelming, and any card you want is there.
Right.
So that's tough.
So let me ask you this.
Hold on. Okay. I got to give a shout out.
Four Leaf's getting ready to get a shout out, everybody. You wish you were as cool as Four Leaf to get a shout out by John Mangini. I'm still waiting for a shout out.
He just sent me this original piece. How awesome is that?
Nice. Oh, man. I always wanted an 88 Seaman on my back.
Now, you said, Four Leaf, you said this is with markers, right?
You did that with markers?
Yeah. I mean, he created it. He did this. I keep wanting to say he painted it, but I don't know how he did it. But it's amazing. I seriously couldn't believe how amazing it was.
We have some really talented people in this community. Reindeer Studios, Four Leaf, Costa Rica Cards. There are some really talented people that have tremendous abilities to create art. I think that's just so cool when people can have that kind of what's the word, like just that kind of passion or other hobby that's just so amazing. I mean, I couldn't draw a stick man. I mean, I'm like the world's worst. So it's really really cool. So I did want to ask you, John.
I have to step away for 2 seconds.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
No problem.
My internet wasn't working, so I jumped on my phone, and now my phone's going dead, and I have to plug it in, or I'm going to lose connection again.
All right, man. Yeah. It did look great, Four Leaf. You're right. It looked great in that frame, without a doubt. But yeah, markers. I cannot believe you did that with markers. That is crazy, dude. That is like, I'm not even kidding you. And I'm sure when people they see my channel, they see me, they're not surprised when I say, literally, I could probably barely draw a stick man with 2 arms and 2 legs. Like, to have it even look halfway decent. My artistic ability is that of a toddler, and that's probably being generous.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. So the question I have for you, John, I want to ask you is that a lot of people talk about the Japanese cards that they've been around, they've been making American ball players over the years. Obviously, there's Japanese equivalent to that in Japan of the Japanese Hall of Famers and all that. Is there a untapped, aside from Venezuelan cards, is there an untapped country that has created cards over the years that you've come across or you thought were super cool you didn't know about, like maybe Europe or Africa, other parts of Asia or something, where they're creating cards of American ball players or some equivalent of that? Because like I found out recently that wrestling cards, I'm starting to get a little bit of wrestling, like they've been made all around the world. Like you can find wrestling cards of like wrestlers that you grew up with in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, or like are being made in like literally like the armpits of the world and like the hole in the wall countries. So I didn't know if there's baseball cards out there that kind of fall in that category, since you're always about that, off the beaten path stuff.
Yeah, and New York Yanks fan just said it. Korea, believe it or not, that's another one. When that really happened that all these Koreans started coming in is well, let me grab this. So there was an auction. They auctioned a player from the Korean League, And none of the Koreans. There was like Chan Ho Park, and there were some Korean players over the years, but none of them came up and did what Ichiro did, that kind of thing. And so a few years ago, the Pittsburgh Pirates won an auction for an obscure player from South Korea named Jung Ho Gang. His last name is actually Kang, and I became kind of fascinated with him because my wife's last name is Kang, but in Korean it's pronounced Gung. Americans usually pronounce it Kang. Like there's a Danielle Kang that plays in the LPGA. So this guy came up, and he was immediately embraced in Pittsburgh because when he came up, he came up late. He came up a bit late, and he had the best 1 month of any Pirate rookie since like Paul Wainer, like going back decades. He just lit it up. And then he blew out his knee, or he broke his leg or something sliding into home, and he didn't finish the year. Despite the fact that he came up a little late and got hurt in June, he still came in third in Rookie of the Year balloting, only behind Chris Bryant and Matt Duffy. So what happened was he had a bit of a drinking problem, and he kept getting DUIs. And he went back to Korea, and he got so many damn DUIs, he couldn't even get out of the country to come back. And so he sat out a year, and then he finally came back, and he did okay, and he did pretty good in training camp. But then when he came to the Pirates, he was batting like 147 or something. But going back to my point is his success early on, because he was really fun to watch. I mean, they had these King Kong, what do they call him? King Kang. They'd have like King Kong shirts, and they say King Kang that you could buy in the Strip District in Pittsburgh. And there was a big, you go to the games, they had signs up for him and stuff. He made a big splash. So anyway, after that, I've noticed that all of a sudden, all these Korean players are coming over from that league, and that may be the next, Japanese league kind of thing. Another thing is, those of us, there's a lot of people on here who collect like the old Negro League cards and the Cuban cards. So from like the 40s and 50s, there are some great Cuban issues. They're all pricey. They're not cheap. But they're really nice to collect if you're into that sort of thing.
That's awesome. I knew that. I forgot about the Cubans. I knew about the Venezuelans. I know they are also very hard to find, in good shape, and they're really expensive when you do find them. Even like the no-name players or whatever, just because I guess the rarity of it all. But I found it because if you go to it's happening right now again.
You're shaking.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. Let me leave. I'm gonna come back. All right, hold on. I'm leaving.
He's shaking a bit. Let's see what we have to say here. Yeah, you should go to a Pirates game. That PNC Park is great. It's just an awesome park. Yeah, you probably missed out on the Pokemon if you wanted to be an investor. 1991 pack of Baseball Magazine. 91 pack of Baseball Magazine? I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Max Headroom. Forley, if you have an Australian Acuna, I don't think I've ever seen a card from Australia. Of course, back in the tobacco era, there's lots of cards from the UK and overseas. There's lots of cards from Spain. In the late 80s, there were a lot of basketball cards from Spain that feature, Michael Jordan and all the great players of that time. And they're so under, the one thing I've always been fascinated with culture, and I studied international business in college. I studied Japanese for 4 semesters, studied Spanish, before that in college. So I've always been fascinated with world culture, and I've been fortunate enough to travel all over the world. And so I'm fascinated with the overseas issues, especially the Babe Ruths. There are so many great overseas issues of Babe Ruth. And it always kind of frustrated me, but at the same time, I was happy because I got to pick them up far less. In that they, back in the day, they never carried the allure that the U.S. issued cards did, right? And so there are some great Babe Ruth cards from overseas and other players as well. But especially Babe Ruth. He was one player that, even though baseball wasn't popular in all of these different countries, they issued cards of. Like the Sanella Margarine from Germany, for instance. And Germany, I have one up there, America something. Great card, one of my favorite all-time Ruth cards. But, back before, now they're probably jacked way up. But before they were way, less money than getting some of even his strip cards that were issued in the United States.
Let's see here. Do you see this message here from Prestige?
Yeah, I don't know what that's referring to. 91 Baseball Magazine, BBM. I might be familiar, but it's not. I'm not. I might not be understanding. I have all kinds of magazine cards. Topps used to have a magazine, and they would have card inserts. I kept them all. I have a lot of those.
So, you mentioned the Korean guy, and you said Pittsburgh embraced him.
Yeah.
So, do you see that kind of level of acceptance from other players from other countries coming to Pittsburgh?
Well, Pittsburgh's always been that way. I mean, they were, they were an early adoption of Negro League players. Roberto Clemente, obviously, like the legend for Latin players. They've always been that way. In '71, they fielded the first all-black starting lineup. So, yeah, I mean, it's just always been that way. Now, I'm not gonna say that back in the '50s and '60s they were all treated well. I don't mean that, but in Pittsburgh, we embrace our athletes. I mean,
I agree.
We love them. We love them. So anybody that was, Clemente is practically a god in Puerto Rico, but he's also practically a god in Pittsburgh. I mean, he is so revered. He's adored.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and call it. It's an hour and 15 minutes. I want to respect your time, John.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you hopping on with me, man.
I just want to address Baseball Magazine Company, and they've been making packs of cards since 1991. I don't think I'm familiar with them. Somebody do a video so I can check them out.
Then you better do it.
I might be, but maybe I just don't know them by the name.
Oh, there you go. Henry said Bob Lewis is a god of Pittsburgh.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Hey, Zombie, thanks so much for having me on. I had fun.
Thanks for hopping on.
I think it was a good discussion. I hope I didn't offend too many people. I have a way of meaning really well and still offending people. I've just kind of been that way. I don't know why. I don't intend it, but sometimes it happens.
As long as I'm in here with you, I'll be able to take more heat than you, I'm sure. So don't worry.
You found God recently. You took off your hat, and you have no controversy anymore. You're all lovey-dovey.
Yeah, I can't help myself. It's all about the YouTube Hall of Fame.
I was just gonna say the YouTube Hall of Fame must have had a positive impact in your life.
It sure did.
Thanks everybody for watching.
Again, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, thank you guys.